Well, welcome to our next section in analyzing COVID-19 data with SQLite. We're going to look at some basic SQL to analyze the statewide data. Now, if you're just jumping in now, I would encourage you to go back to the previous videos so you can install the data and begin to work with getting things set up and understanding some of the processes that we're going to be going through. But at this point, what we're going to be doing is writing some of the SQL, and you're going to see how each of those queries work. So I'm going to write the query, we're going to run it, and then I'm going to explain what's actually happening so you learn how to write SQL so you can come up with your own ideas. So back in our folder, again under COVID, I have a folder called Queries. And if you go in here, there's a couple. This is COVID County, COVID State. These are for Postgres. I'm going to show some of this later as kind of some bonus material. But right now I want to look at the SQLite state examples. Now you could right-click this and go to Edit or Open With and then find some kind of a program to open up with. Notepad++ works. You could even use Notepad. I'm using CodeWriter and it's already connected to that. So I'm going to just double-click on the SQL queries. And this is CodeWriter. What I'm going to do is just make this a little bit bigger so that way you can see it on the screen. We'll go to the top. Now, if you remember our first video, we grabbed the data for the countywide data. We also grabbed some of the statewide data, and here is some of the information for the boundary data. So those geographic files. And so that you don't have to re-download those, we actually have a folder called Spatial Data, and that includes the counties, it also includes the state boundaries and those CBSA areas. We also looked at some of the different queries when we first started out writing our SQL. So what I'm going to do is just copy this, and I'm going to bring this into our SQLite. And this is a standard SQL query. Remember, we have this field called DT. That was where we converted the textual version of dates into an actual date field. So I'm going to say select that field, the dates, and the hospitalized currently from daily where the state is equal to Maryland. And we'll run that. And this gives us all the hospitalizations for the state of Maryland. Now you'll see that September 13th is the most recent. So I'm going to make one other change. We can order our data. So I can say order by DT, and then I'm going to say ASC for ascending. We run that, and now you can see that hospitalizations were not kept track of until April 21st. So I actually want to get rid of that, and what I'm going to do is write another part of the query. So we've now got all the hospitalizations for Maryland, but I want to also grab it where hospitalized currently is not just blank or empty. And there we have it. And again, in something like SQLite, we can copy all the rows, or select all the rows and then copy them using the SQLite GUI. And then I'm just going to come here into Excel, I'll paste that, let's expand it. They're all selected, so I'm going to come over here to Insert, and we'll insert a graph. And you can see that shows us the hospitalizations. Now I'm not going to, actually let's put it in here. So you can start to see what's happening with hospitalizations in the state of Maryland since April 21st until the current date. We can come in here and let's change the Maryland to New York. And we'll come in, just say NY. And we'll run that. And again, we can select all. We can copy them. We'll come back into Excel. Let's delete this. We'll delete that. Paste it. And then go into Insert. And get a look at the chart. So that's what the New York hospitalizations look like. The other thing we can do is let's look at hospitalized currently and in ICU currently. So let's just, I'm not going to copy this whole query, let's just copy this first part, come back in here, and we'll do it for New York. And then let's run it. So now this is telling me who's hospitalized and who's in ICU and in terms of the numbers. So let's again go in here, right click, select all, right click, say copy, come into Excel, delete that chart, delete that, and then Control V will paste this, and then we can go to insert again and get our graph. Now this is kind of cool. This is showing the ICU data as well as the hospitalization data. I'm going to do the same thing for Maryland again, where I live. So this is what you can see. It's so easy, right? I'm just changing the name of a state, and before you know it, I've now got all the data. We'll copy that, delete that, let's paste it, and then you can see that my muscle memory is getting such that I can do this relatively quickly. So you can make some charts. So this is what the state of Maryland's hospitalizations and ICUs look like. Now I don't want to belabor the point, but you get the idea. Make it for Texas. All right, let's make it for South Dakota. Now you'll notice nothing in ICU. Why? Those states very likely don't record that information. So some states do, some states do not. Let's look at Connecticut. See, so a lot of states don't have that information. And I can just go back and I'm going to add another one. You're going to find when you watch videos with me, I just kind of think outside the box. So let's put in death increase, and we'll do this for Maryland. There we go. So now I have hospitalizations, or hospitalized currently, and the death increase. Oh, and then we have to do a comma there. There we go. So there's our 3 records. I will select all, we'll copy, we'll come back into Excel, let's delete, and then throw that in there, go to our insert, and create our graph. So now we're looking at the ICU, the hospitalizations, and the deaths. So let's scroll down to our little cheat sheet here, and let's look at selecting data for a particular month for a state. So let's look at Florida, and we're interested in July and all the records that occur in July. And we'll run this. So this gets me all the July dates, and you can see them here. Actually, we'll just leave that. If you go to date here, you can see they're all in July. So again, that's something you can't necessarily grab from all the dashboards. We've just gone in and pulled it out. Here's where the magic happens. It's this strf time. So we're going to grab the date and we're going to convert it to a string. And it requires 2 variables to be put in there. The second is the field, and that field has to be a date field, and that's where that DT was so important when we created that in the first video. And then I want to know which type of time category I'm looking for. Well, in this case, I'm looking for a month. I could also look for the week as well, but let's just keep it at month. And the state's equal to Florida. Now I'm going to change that star. So I'm going to include here the date, the hospitalized currently, the in ICU, and the death increase. So let's run that. And again, we can come in here, select all. I can copy them. We'll go back into Excel. And then we'll come in here and we'll paste that information and go into our insert. And let's create another chart. And that shows us what's happening in July. So we've been able to isolate that month. Let's grab the next one and we'll talk about that. So I'm just going to copy this for the moment, and we'll put that back into my SQLite GUI. So in this case, I'm interested in looking at the number that are hospitalized in multiple states. And I'm looking at it again for the month of July. I'm introducing one other characteristic, and that's how we can cast different data types into other data types. If you use something like Postgres, it's really cool and easy. You just type : and then integer, and you're done. It doesn't work like that in SQLite. SQLite doesn't have that ability. And remember, we brought in all those records as text. I want to do some math to it. I can't do math with text. So what I have to do is convert hospitalized currently, which is a text field. I want to convert it into an integer field. So we cast that as an integer. So you can see that's selected here. That's going to return that value of hospitalized currently. If it's a 3 and a 6, which is really the letter 3 and the letter 6, it's going to convert that to an integer of 36. The other thing I want, because this is how many people are currently hospitalized, I want to get the maximum value. So what this is doing is it's telling me what is the maximum number of people that were hospitalized, again, in July. Now here, remember in our previous query that we just ran, we had this saying '07, right? We turned that into a text. Now, I just wanted to show you with the cast, we can convert that '07 into a 7 because we're going to cast that value, this date and time that comes out when the month, we're going to then cast that into an integer, so that's going to be a 7. And we're adding another wrinkle. This is called the group by statement. We're going to group all the values based upon the state and the date. So for the month of July, I want to know how many people in each state have been hospitalized on each day. So let's run that. And this tells me on July 1st, Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York had these 3 characteristics of who was hospitalized. Now maybe you have another question. Maybe the question is, I don't want to know for every single date what was the number of people hospitalized. I might want to know what is the maximum number of people who are hospitalized in the state for the month of July. So I'm going to get rid of the date there and the date here. So of all those dates that we looked at before, this is going to grab the maximum number, and it's going to group it by the state. So for the state of New York in the month of July, what was the maximum number of people that were currently in the hospital? We'll do the same for Connecticut and New Jersey. So there we have it. So New York had 1,080. We can change it to, say, August. And you can see how it went down in New York. That's actually kind of helpful. Let's do another one here. Let's go with let's put Florida in there as well. And I just ran that so you can see the numbers. Let's go, actually, let's do this first. Let's create one for the month of April. There we go. So nothing in Florida. Now we have to double check some of the metadata to find out is that actually because there were none or they're not collecting it. So that's something you're going to have to be a good data analyst to figure that out. Let's come back into Excel here and let's put this in. And I'm going to create another chart. This time I'm going to create a pie chart. So this shows Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Florida. And of course you can pretty that chart up if you wanted. Let's come back in here. Now let's do it for, say, July. We'll run that. Now we have a little bit different numbers. Let's come in here, copy, or select all. Let's copy this, come back into Excel, and let's add another one here, another row. And let's come back into Insert, and we'll create another pie chart. All right, so the colors are different. Like I said, you can pretty this up if you want, but all of a sudden you start to see what's happening in April versus July and how Florida has increased in their hospitalizations and New York has gone down rather significantly. Here's a little trick of something you can do. We're selecting the states. How about let's just get rid of the where the state is in. I'm going to comment that out. Now I'm going to get all the states and their hospitalizations for July. Oh, had an error there. What I have to do, I forgot. I got rid of the where, so I still need a where clause. So where, it's July. So this is for all 50 states. So I have my hospitalizations in July. So this gives us some indication of where things are at with all the different states. And again, we can say select all. I can copy this. And we can come back into Excel again. Let's paste it. There we go. And I can create another chart. And this time maybe I do want to create a chart of the different states as a bar chart. Okay, so again, it's a little ugly. You can pretty that up, but you get the idea that we're all of a sudden now starting to ask more interesting questions because we have access to all the data. What's going to happen? Well, let's look at what's happening in September. Right? Same idea. It's that easy. You just change the number and you're done. Let's look at another one here. Let's just build on what we did. Now I want to look at all the tests in a given month. Now there's a lot of different fields in the database, so you can access different ones, but I just decided just to do a little bit of math. So I want to sum up the increase in the positives and the increase in the negatives. And I'm calling that total positive. It's really not total positive. It's really total tests. So made a little error in what I typed there, but this is just returning the result of this summation as its other field, and we're going to do it for New York, and we're going to do that group by again. And notice I'm grabbing the month and then I'm grouping it by the month. This would return an error if I did not have the month. When you sum your data, that's called an aggregate clause. So it's aggregating the sum of these values for each day. Then I can add up the sum for the entire country if I wanted, and let's do that. I'm going to comment that out and that out. And that's the total cases in the US, but what I'm going to do instead is group it by the month. And I'm going to do it for New York. So here we have each of the tests that have been given in each month. So how many people were tested? And you can see very few back in March, and then quite a bit in July and August. But that's giving me kind of a weird number, an 03, 04. So what I'm going to do is cast that as integer, and then let's run it. There we go. So I'm going to select all. Oops. Select all. Let's copy that and let's come back into Excel. We'll paste it, and then there we go, paste it here. So we start off with March, and again we can come into a chart. So again, you can see what's happening in terms of the testing that's occurred in the state of New York. And I've gone in and I've just kind of prettied up the chart so that way we have the appropriate number associated with each month. So again, you can see where the testing has occurred in the state of New York. I can come back in here and get rid of the negative increase and just look at the positive increase. And again, we can say as positive. And now I have the number of positives that have occurred in New York. And we can do the same for the death increase. And just select all, copy. And just to make things a little bit easier on myself, I'm just going to paste that. And let's take these numbers here. And we'll put that in there and just change up the chart. So now you can see what's happened with deaths in New York over those months. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, and probably enough for now. We'll continue this in the next video. If you enjoyed this, please like the video. Consider subscribing to the page, so that way as I produce more videos as we move through, you'll be the first to know when those come out. Also, if you want to learn more, don't forget to visit my site at artlembo.com, and under online courses you can learn about how to write SQL in my course Spatial SQL with Postgres and PostGIS, as well as some of my other courses that deal with statistical problem solving in geography. Also, you can check out my books, and as I said before, I have an actual book on how do you do a lot of SQL with SQLite, which is really making use of SQLite. So feel free to grab that. It's a free download. This is a great book to just kind of have at the side of your desk as you're working through writing SQL to understand what some of that syntax says. So anyway, great to do this video, and we will see you in the next.